Okay, this is the next keynote session. And we have three speakers. I see Dr. Perry is here. Malcolm, it's good to see you again. Saw you last year. It's very nice to see you again. And is Paul here? Paul Sheedy?
Yes, Beverly Ball, will coming in within a few seconds.
Oh, okay. And the Baroness Rajakic, is she here?
Maybe she will join soon. Let's start.
Okay, that is perfectly fine. We can go ahead and get started. Each speaker will have 20 minutes. And Malcolm, you are up number one. But one of the things that Malcolm is a visiting professor at the University of Surrey. And when I was reading his biography, we got our PhDs the same year. So
just last year.
It was a great year, wasn't it? I just wanted to say. So we've been around for quite a while.
Indeed.
And so I am going to turn it over to you, and you will have 20 minutes. And we hope everything goes well. Okay?
Thank you very much for the introduction. And let me just share the screen, which is not as easy as I thought it was going to be. Here we go. And if I put it onto this view here, 1 second. So let me just put it into. Okay, I'm not sure what you can see. Can you see? Can you hear me and see everything?
We can see it. Do you want to make it full screen? You can click on the presentation mode at the bottom of you're there.
It works. Marvelous.
Very good.
Thank you for the introduction. And to put some context to this, I'm in 1935. The British botanist Sir Arthur Tansley coined the term ecosystem, and he used it to describe the relationship between biological communities and non-biological environment. But it's now widely adopted for other complex systems, of which entrepreneurship is one. And the way entrepreneurs interact with a wide range of variables is important, which if they get it right, it can create wealth, or if they get it wrong, it can still bring experience and human capital to a community. So they've gained in value, and their impact has also been of great interest beyond the individual characteristics of these people. And many people are starting to consider the external factors that are most likely to benefit their performance. And following that, when looking forward, what new tools and opportunities in the social and business landscape they can use to drive growth. One second. Next slide. So I'm just trying to move the slide along for myself with my notes. Earlier research on this was published by Siegel Quince Wicksteed in the Cambridge Phenomena. That was in the 80s. And it set out the way academic discovery and entrepreneurship was pushing out technological innovation in a region surrounding a university. And in 2018, not so long ago, the same company, Siegel Quince Wicksteed, published further data on this relationship. And this reinforces the need for a series of links between a number of planned elements that include policy, and those that are influenced by personal choice and opportunity, and how these need to be connected in a mix of knowledge, skills, and business expertise. And of course, physical factors that match the preferences that influence individual choices, support families, and are affordable to young innovators. However, there's also a subtext to each of these headings that includes effective regional governance to maintain each of the elements that make sure they remain in balance and operate effectively. I believe Silicon Valley has become quite overcrowded. At a more detailed level, it's now widely recognized that the relationship between R&D and innovation can be enhanced with the presence of corporates and other startups, but it can also be driven harder through the presence of innovation cultivators that include incubators and accelerators, tech transfer offices, business mentor programs, and access to early stage business finance, and some of which are provided and operated by private investors, Y Combinator is the most famous probably of those, while others are by universities or public authorities, which are coming common as well. And to help to spread ideas, it's useful if these institutions encourage both inter and cross-disciplinary networking to help build a wider understanding of the technicalities of a discipline and any business opportunities. But today, the potential value of these relationships is being accelerated with the injection of high-power computing and big data in the many dimensions of AI, which is helping entrepreneurs to add even greater economic value to science, technology, engineering, and social science. And large companies are using this to build new levels of entrepreneurship and increase their focus on startups involved in the realm of AI and building the AI ecosystem. And governments are using it to understand society and the public realm. So how's the macro elements of this ecosystem shaping up? In a broad-based commentary from my colleague, Professor Andrew Rakowski, who's from the university, and he's in our Institute of People-Centered Artificial Intelligence. He's in the discussion, he's noted that in the UK and other countries, the academic, business and government interest in AI is fast-moving, fragmented, and extremely competitive. And this urgency is being driven by a belief that the winner takes all, with companies and national governments recognizing that whoever dominates AI will also go on to dominate economically, politically, and militarily, particularly where the filing of patents has become such an important aspect of the technology. And it may result in the control of great swathes of functions, with concerns about the potential for increased levels of coercion or more powerful forms of persuasion of whole societies, which would be in the hands of few through surveillance capitalism. And at present, there is no agreed market event or structure, such as new regulations, major procurement, or national infrastructure projects to create an ecosystem that brings companies together or to drive investment, which is what has been successfully achieved in, for example, the sectors such as mobile telecoms, transport, and space. However, there is some international interest in the lack of current arrangements. For example, the OECD AI Policy Observatory is actively collecting, analysing and curating data from those national policies that have been published on issues such as guidance and regulation, governance, financial support and provision of training data sets, and the main AI enablers and other incentives. The OECD data also compares national policies and priorities, such as their position on human capital, technological competence, and industrial and business opportunities, as well as social development and access to data sets for training. And in some instances, the policies also reflect the degree of expectation that AI will link economic structures to government interests, from which a number of elements of geopolitical intent can be inferred, like using national data to direct education programs and a national curriculum to build the skills necessary to drive and manage an economy that is heavily dependent on AI. And I believe an example might be in China. Other policies relate to access to national data sets that are being collected by governments and commercial interests. And in some countries, the development of these policies is being made visible through such documents as the UK's AI roadmap. And I'm sure there are other countries that have the same. And the OECD is also using Google searches to see the distribution of international interests in various applications of AI, particularly patent levels. And that's coming through, showing differences across Europe and across other parts of the world. The OECD has also published a number of recommendations to government in terms of the evolution of the AI ecosystem. And these have been reinforced by the World Bank. And they include facilitating public and private investment in R&D to drive innovation in trustworthy AI, and to ensure there is democratization of the ecosystems. And this involves making digital infrastructure, technologies and mechanisms more widely available, because some people are excluded from this, particularly facilitating access to data and relevant knowledge, and empowering people through education by supporting the development of skills. So these can help people and to support workers to secure economic opportunity as these economies adopt higher levels of AI transition. And finally, cooperation across sectors and borders to ensure responsible stewardship of trustworthy AI. Despite these national policies, it's clear that AI ecosystems are largely being driven by commercial imperative rather than government policy. And in terms of corporate interest in the technology, corporate investment tells us an important story. Amazon leads the pack with a figure of around 30 billion a year investment, and Alphabet, Google close behind, and chasing them are the other big names one might expect. And annual patent activity is high, which is could be a long-term problem for many companies and countries under existing patent laws. And private companies are now increasing their input into the scientific literature, exceeding that's coming out of universities. And currently this level of interest in AI is highly US-centric, but there's evidence that China is also driving hard, and their government expenditure links closely with a commercial imperative. The level of interest in the technology that makes up the current AI family resulted in a current global shortage of AI talent, which we heard from some of the last speakers. To resolve this, many large corporations have created overseas research laboratories, including in the UK. They also help these large corporations, it also helps these large corporations target domestic markets by setting up AI labs. Facebook, Google, IBM, and Microsoft have an estimated 62 AI labs between them, and they're also targeting startups and SMEs for skills. And it goes further, with some universities finding it more difficult to attract postgraduates into their academic community as early stage researchers. And some are losing tenured academic staff and researchers that are going into industry. And with a long-term knock-on effect, it'll affect academic research, which is why so many national AI policies reflect a long-term strategic intention to build capacity. Also, although some are taking more protective approach than others. However, one view is that there is a lack of international coordination of policy, so the demand for a tight labor talent market has become highly competitive. However, based on the International Association of Science Park data, of which the Surrey Research Park, and I've been a member since 1984, from their worldwide membership, there's still a healthy community of AI companies being formed, with just over 20 of their 335 membership reporting the presence of AI businesses, which is 20% of the 335 membership reporting these businesses. And this translates into more than 2,000 AI companies, startups and scaled-ups, with some 1,000 new AI companies developing over the past 3 years. That's 2019 to 21. And this growth in the interest in science and technology parks and areas of innovation is also reflected by data showing an increased proportion of venture capital going into AI companies over the period 2012 to 21, rising from less than 5% to in excess of 20%. The focus of these in the UK, where the data is more refined, based on data from Surrey's AI team as well, listed here. They show a strong interest in fintech as well as marketing and advertising, but it drops away in more regulated areas of healthcare and others. And you can see the range here from fintech right down to transportation, which is relatively low. Despite the drive in this startup scene, it's still in its infancy. And that has raised a number of questions about the way the AI ecosystem will influence its future. These include its ease of access and ease of use, the rising call for policy controls of data capture and privacy, perhaps in relation to data collection, the role data has in generating business ideas, and what is the best system to capture this data and its cost. In terms of exploitation to do this, how best to use this to grow a business, and what and how customers view the relationship. As a customer, I personally hate chatbots, but I also hate hanging on the phone for help. So there's a kind of balance going on, I guess, in every individual. The view of investors in these startups is changing, and how to structure a company to commercialize and grow the business, which includes the necessary skills base. And also, who owns the IP that comes from the data is an interesting question when you look at some of these issues. And the value of the data on any exit that you might make, which is still a matter of debate by WIPO, which is actually carrying on a significant debate without any conclusion at the present, as far as I know. I hope some of what I've said has struck a chord with you, and for me it's been a pleasure. So thank you very much for listening. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much. You didn't even take your full 20 minutes.
Okay, well, I cut some slides because I thought it was too long.
Well, you took 15 minutes and 11 seconds.
Okay, I wasted my morning.
So I think that's fine. I really liked your presentation. I think it's very interesting when you talk about the ecosystem. I wondered, and the sort of the human reaction to dealing with bots and all of the AI is, I think this is really going to be an interesting area of research in the future. Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering if academic researchers will engage in it, or if it's going to be the businesses, do you think?
Well, I don't think that businesses particularly worry about it. All they care about is can they make it into a commercial business? And I think that that's the role of academics. And I guess if policy flows from academic activity, then governments are going to show an interest. Clearly, there are some trading zones like the European Union and the US, which are very concerned about access to data and how it's recorded. But I don't think that that's universal. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, businesses will take what they can, I think. I mean, they have to be ethical, otherwise they fail to trade. You can look back at what happened with Shell when they sank that oil rig. But there is still a long way to go.
Okay, is Paul Sheedy here?
I am. I'm here, yes.
Oh, okay. It is good to see you again.
You too.
And Paul is a serial entrepreneur, and he gave a wonderful presentation last year at this conference, and I'm looking forward to hearing his presentation this year. And so I'm going to turn it over to you, Paul.
Thank you so much, Professor. So yeah, we've a lot has happened in the last year. So we've been working now, really focusing more on AI. So hence the relevance this year over last. We've very carefully looked at the issues happening with the basic model we had, and realized the urgency for forwarding and enhancing the way we make buildings much smarter and cut our cushions. As you know, the building sector is the biggest emitter of carbon, 40%. So it is the one with maximum sin on its plate. And we've realized the more and more we dig into our occupancy data, the more solutions we can find. What I'll do, I'll take you through a brief presentation.
Do you have a
I do.
screen share that you want to do?
I'm going to bring it straight up for you now, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Great. Is that showing up okay for you?
No. Well, it says you've started. Yes. Yes.
Fantastic,
wonderful
fantastic
picture.
Well, yeah. Well, wonderful in ways. A very beautiful photograph, but many sins being committed here, I'm afraid, Beverly. What we see in any city, Kuwait, London, New York, you name it, Hangzhou, where I'm also based, is this. We see these buildings lit up like a forest of Christmas trees. And the truth is, They're not really being used by people working around the clock. And when we go into the granular detail of why these buildings are lit up all night long, it's a litany of sins which should not be committed. So we will be bringing technology in that allows the buildings to understand what to do more. So Unified is all about building intelligence. And as I stated, in the last year since we last presented, we've really focused on the AI side and how that data pushed through the right channels actually gives you a lot of the solutions of where we need to go in the future. So our sort of mantle is that you cannot manage what you cannot measure. And really, I think the building sector, the commercial real estate sector has got away with a lot of sins for a long time. And I'm afraid we're calling them out. And thankfully, I think we're in a situation right now in the world where between the war in Ukraine, thankfully, the world taking net zero seriously, the need for people to realize we have to change and lower our energy emissions. It means that this is probably the hottest time we've had in many years. So what we help companies do is really analyze what is really happening in their buildings to enable them to deliver the data they should focus on to hit their net zero goals. And again, what we have now is things like ESG ratings, where buildings have to get up to a category C by 2026, category B by 2030. And sadly, many are miles and miles away from that. So although we're going into recession, although things are not good for this sector, they've had it good for a long time. And now they need to start making changes and moving forward. So really what we're doing as a company is collecting the data on the occupancy, with that information, delivering wisdom back to our clients. Now, we've moved ahead, Beverly, since last year from just occupancy data to embedding into this a lot of environmental data. So looking at the CO2, the humidity levels, the temperatures of each building. But then as I'll take you forward, looking at the impacts of sunlight, of weather, of what we have in the UK, far too much of train strikes and tube strikes, what the impact of children's midterm breaks are. And more importantly than anything else, the impact of the new culture that we see in many, many countries, not in all countries, but in many countries, of this hybrid working and how that's affecting the cost basis rising rapidly. I've just literally got back from Vietnam, where I saw very clearly that everybody's back in the office every day. And the impact of that, what people are not thinking about is that, you know, my office here is running full capacity 5 days a week. Except if my staff work from the office 5 days a week, but other staff here, you know, might come in 1 or 2 days. The rest of the days they're at home using energy to heat their houses, using the lighting, using the kettle, using all that stuff. So we're running the businesses as they were, and then we have the extra impact of people now working at home as well. So it is a worst case scenario happening right now, and hence the sector is waking up quite quickly. Now, I'm going to show you the sins of the world right now. This is the carbon emissions per country. Now, as we see very clearly, China's there at 7.2, the biggest emitter, but it also has 1.4 billion people. When we look at India, India is also at 1.4 billion, about to overtake China next year. And today is significant because today is the day we've hit 8 billion people in the world. And it is human beings that are causing these issues. Now, the outlier, as you'll see, and I know this is not politically correct today, but the big outlier there, I'm afraid, is the Middle East at 19.2 tons of CO2 per head. But Africa right down at 0.7. Now, we're going to see a huge change in Africa. We're going to see a huge change in India in the next decade. And what we're trying to say is technologies like our technologies and automated BMS systems, etc., are the solution. And what we've built around this is an ecosystem of very passionate people with no egos in the room, who together can deliver for this sector, the biggest emitter of carbon, the systems to change the way they go forward. And we have to start moving on net zero today, not tomorrow. It's absolutely vital. So, as I mentioned earlier on, and I think I mentioned even last year, that the whole office place has fundamentally changed. And no architect ever designed the building for COVID-19 happening or hybrid working happening. And we're seeing massive numbers of people not using an office anymore, huge changes in how an office is actually managed. And here in the UK, we've had a 400% increase in energy in the last year. And that is hitting the bottom line. That's also hitting the fact we are using more and more energy. And I almost feel this perfect storm is what's needed to slap some heads together and make them realize now is the time for change. And we will be forthrightly making sure we sing from that same hymn sheet. So pretty much, if you talk to JLL or CBRE or Savills, whoever you might want to talk to, it is widely agreed that at least 30% of energy in a building is wasted. And as I said last year, at the end of COP26, when India and China topped out and didn't sign up to the final agreement with Alex Sharma to carry on coal production, well, if I can stop, if our technologies, if not mine, but the technologies in this sector can work together, we can stop this 30% of energy being used. And that means we stop 30% more coal-fired power stations being put online. And I'm really hammering home, the more we wake up to the fact we change lighting to LEDs, we start putting in intelligent BMS systems, which are building management systems, to control air conditioning, faster we can get to here, you know, and change the way we emit. Now, there's only around 4% of the world's most prestigious buildings we would call smart buildings. 96% plus are really quite dumb. And in many ways, if you're putting in small amounts of technology, which start giving you the data on what's happening in the building, then you have a smart building. It might not be the best polished brain in the world, but you have a brain that is now making sure it is doing the right things at the right time. Now, an illustration here at the bottom is a building which we've been managed for many, many years. This building takes 570 hot desks. And this is normal. This disparity in Monday to Friday working is absolutely normal. On a Friday, we see as low as 2% of people coming to work in this particular building, and overall around 10% of people come to work on a Friday in the UK. In all the, I don't know, must be about 26, 28 buildings we were monitoring in the UK. Yet they still run as they did pre-COVID. They still have all the lights on, all the air conditioning running. They still have all the same number of security guards, restaurant staff, cleaning staff, etc. And you sit here, my frustration levels, Professor Henderson, are so high of why, when you have data to change, are you not changing? And a lot of this is just downright laziness of the sector. And what we're not doing any longer is staying quiet. We're waking people up at a rapid rate. And look, what I can't do, I will do eventually, what I can't do today is solve all the world's problems and solve all of the sustainability goals. I work very closely with some wonderful people in New York on education and on poverty in Africa, etc. And that's not what I'm here for today. What we're focusing on is these ones today that we can make an impact on. How we can change in industry, innovation, infrastructure, how this data can change the way they work, lower the, increase the sustainability of cities and communities, responsible usage of energy. And my goodness, if we just all think a little harder, we can make these changes massively. And as I mentioned earlier on, everything we do here is about partnerships, partnerships, partnerships. No one company is going to solve all this. No one AI technique is going to solve this. It is a case of us all working together, being the best we are at what we do, meshing together different techniques and delivering to the buildings exactly what they need to do to lower their carbon emissions and stop the nonsense that's going on in the world right now. So I'm going to take you through sort of the 5 areas that we as a company are more focused on. So we help the building sector with the security side. So we know who is where in a building at any one time. Should Professor Parry come to me and decide, actually, I want to go to 54 and see who the view is, well, when he's detected there, he's breached security, and that will be alerted. If some of the sites take my Picasso, which I don't have, out of my building, we know that Picasso is moved. We've basically made both people and assets a detectable unit. And when they're working normally, that's fine. When there's a change, we know that change has happened and we can alert security. We also help with reception staff, greater attention. As you walk into a building, we detect who you are. They are allowed, the reception team then engage with you because they know who you are, the face and profile is there on their screen. But the big core focus I'm here today to talk about is on net zero targeting. How, by looking at the occupancy data, meshing that with environmental data, pushing that data into intelligent building control systems, BMS systems, etc., you can really understand how to change a building and work better. But also on the facilities management side of a building, I'll have a graph I'm going to show you later on, which is quite embarrassing because I had no idea that the floor plate here with I've got a lot of companies here, how much of a male-dominated sector this is. It's embarrassing. But it also illustrates how the cleaning has never taken into account the difference between the male and female ratio of this floor or any other floor in the building, the usage per day of the building, if it's 10% or 100%, why are we still doing what we did in 2019 and cleaning every 2 hours, restocking a kitchen every 3 hours? It doesn't take into account that. But most importantly, as I mentioned last year, what I'm laser focused on as well is the safety and security of high-rise buildings. The building there behind you, you can see in the background there is actually the tower in Shanghai. No, in Shenzhen, my apologies, Shenzhen. I've been in there, it's 147 stories tall. You cannot get out of that building. Same way you cannot get out of 22 Bishopsgate in London, a building with 13,000 people and 2 evacuation stairways. And no idea of who is in the building. Now we're in 2022, and that is shocking. And our technology is so simple to deploy that we would know exactly how many people on each floor of the building, how many of them have a mobility issue, and more importantly, the fire brigade in Shenzhen or London or New York or whoever else or Kuwait on the way to any building have the day-to-day need to know what they should do next. And this is where AI comes in. It's looking at the data in real time that makes an instant decision, then constantly refines itself so that we have fire brigades who know what they should be doing. We don't end up with situations like we did in London with Grenfell, where 72 people died. Now, this is an illustration, a very simplified illustration of Manchester Metropolitan University that we work incredibly closely with on a real evacuation of that particular building. And what we show in real time is, so this is sped up, by the way, because otherwise we'd be sitting here for 10 minutes watching a graph move very slowly. What we do is at the point the alarm is triggered, we know how many people are on each floor of that building. We also know how many of them have got a mobility issue. Now, my dear chairman, who I love dearly, is 72, but he is no Usain Bolt, and I'm on the 39th floor of this building here. He's going to cause a major issue walking down 39 stairs, flights of stairs. He's going to be quite slow. He's going to hold people behind him. We know where the people with mobility issues are. We know where your fire wardens are. We also know when the fire services are entering your building through each stairway, how many are where. They can be guided about where they should go. We won't end up with this issue we had that happened in 9/11, where we had 412 firefighters in New York lost their lives in those Twin Towers, searching floors which we would have known were actually empty. And this is, you know, it's being blunt, but we can't have this happen again. And the risks, I'm afraid, for high-rise buildings are simply too high. They are very safe, incredibly safe, but when things go wrong, they go drastically wrong. And as you have seen in Dubai over the last years, there were some spectacular fires, you know, between the address, the very ill-fated name, the Torch, which runs on fire twice, and other buildings. And the problem we have, and I have this, I'm particularly focused on the City of London here, we've got a lot of very high-rise buildings, and in the City of London that has roads that were hundreds of years old and are not fit for fire engines to maneuver around and be able to do anything should one building go up. If one building goes up and debris falls off at 40 degrees, I'm afraid they're all going up. And we can't have that happen, not in 2022. So I'm working with the City of London now on the sustainability. I'm on the Sustainability Committee. I'm on the Skyline Task Force. And we have got to implement change and make this happen globally. This is going to change the way we run buildings. What we do in terms of the AI techniques here, and we're working with some companies in Australia, is that in real time, when a fire evacuation happens, we not only know the occupancy of every floor of that building on 10 a.m. on a Monday morning when it might be a maximum capacity, or 10 p.m. on a Friday night, we also know as each person walks into each stairway, what's the capacity and how slowly each stairway is moving. And as we use AI techniques, we can start pushing people into stairways by changing the signage, the dynamic evacuation signage through companies in Australia to push out the balancing of each of those stairways to evacuate them in the most the most balanced way possible. And that is going to make a massive change. And again, what I'm trying to do is make sure that, one, we get the occupants out of the building, two, we minimize the risks for the fire service of any country around the world. Now, very simply what we do, we install these sensors, we configure inside the access card of the building our new technology, which is non-powered, deliver the data, and then deliver the actionable tools, whether it's alerting security or reception of fire brigade, or the data on what the occupancy of each floor is, what the humidity, the temperature is of each floor, and then from that, change the way you run your building. So this takes you through, I won't bore you with our reports, but a lot of very, very deep level reports that allow you to understand the building better. But again, this is important. This is where the environmental meshing is important. In this building here, on a Saturday and Sunday, the air conditioning gets turned off at 2 p.m. Now this reason this graph is in here is an illustration that on a sunny day, one side and only one side of the building, the temperature spikes incredibly quickly. The rest of the building has no effect. So as we bring in technology, as we bring in data like weather data, if I know we've got an overcast day, well, it's not going to affect the humidity, the temperature of this building at all, because the sun isn't going to come in, it's not going to have a spike like that, and you can turn your air conditioning off at 2 p.m. and have no effect. If it's going to be sunny, then we have to think differently on how we run the building. And again, here is an illustration of the facility usage of the toilets in the building. And why are we getting the facilities management teams to clean every 2 hours when clearly that is not the case? And it's a small item, but when you've got a 50-story building that's being cleaned every single 2 hours with no consideration of the occupancy of the building, then you're wasting a lot of, bleach and manpower, etc. So there's a lot of areas where we can focus in and make a big difference. Now, what I want to talk on here is why we moved this year on bringing in artificial intelligence and predictive analysis of what's going to happen in a building. We looked at all of the variations from the tube strikes and train strikes, to the midterm breaks, to the weather patterns that happen. So we saw some strange things. For example, if it rains heavy on a Tuesday morning, it does not affect the occupancy of the building, because if you weren't at work on Friday, or Sunday, or Monday, your guilt conscience kicks in and you go to work on a Tuesday. If it rains on a Monday or Friday, less people again go in than were even expected. So we see not only weather data having effect, but we've also seen what day of the week that psychologically affects the occupancy of the building. Well, what we're trying to do is deliver maybe 48 hours in advance to a building, to a done building, what they need to do in terms of how they change their BMS systems, how high the air conditioning is on, what time it starts at, what time it can be turned off at. And as we work through the various different types of AI techniques, we ran all of them through systems. We then checked and looked at the recursive benefits, the drawbacks, ran all this data through blind, and then did some testing on that data. And very quickly, we realized actually the ones that we thought were going to outperform the Schumann and random forest actually didn't. And the recurrent neural networks are the ones in the end that actually gave us the best data. So here's an illustration of what happened with the random forest. What happened was, as we saw differences happening on a day of week, they got exaggerated out more on a short term with the random forest. And you can see that as we validated the data, it showed the same there. And as we moved into reinforced neural networks, we got far closer. Now, as we ran more of this, we ended up with the actual and the forecast being very, very tight. Now, this is over a short period of time. What we need to do is look at an annual basis of a building, because right now it's 4:39. It's dark already, so the sun isn't going to affect the air conditioning. And we are seeing more people come to work now in the UK because the heating costs at home are actually too high. So as I mentioned, we ran the various different solutions on weather, on tube strikes, etc., to give that data to look at how it varies, not only on the culture, but also on the factual side of the building. And we go within, we're only putting in very, very small amounts of data. We were correct within 8%. Now, as we run that more and more, we think we're going to be right up to about a 98% probability on exactly what the occupancy will be of that building going forward. Again, it's all about real-time insights to deliver the cost reductions and deliver safer buildings. So with that,
Thank you.
On time.
You're perfect. 20 minutes exactly. You timed that beautifully, Paul. And I'm so pleased that you've made the progress since last year. This is, you know, your business is doing well, I think.
And look, we got to look. I don't want to be here today just talk shop. Okay, we got to get people changing, and you know, stop waiting for green hydrogen. Let's start doing things now. And when the green hydrogen comes along, great, fantastic, world's problem solved. But for now, there's a lot can be done. And we need people to sort of focus and get with the program.
Okay, thank you so very, very much. I wish you all the best. I mean, what you're doing is just wonderful. Is the Baroness here?
Professor?
Yes?
It's here. I think we have Dr. Hassan Al-Bahrani will take a place. Dr. Hassan.
Oh.
He is specialized in AI. He will present today a great topic about the Six Sigma and how is Six Sigma changing the world with their strategy. Okay. Beverly, I will leave the floor for you to introduce Professor Hassan Al-Bahrani. Go ahead, Professor.
Hello, I'm going to, there you are, right? Please unmute yourself. You can unmute yourself.
Can you open the mic? Hassan, لو تفتح المايك.
Hi, good evening. I hope that my voice is clear. My honor to be as a practitioner in this conference. Welcome you all, and I hope to be exactly on time with my topic and this presentation. First of all, I would like to appreciate the organizer, those behind the scene, all the practitioner organizers, companies, institution, organization that they are participating in this conference with a variety of ideas that of course will lead us to a better world and happier world. I'll try to share my screen and just let me know if it is already there, shared. Okay, I will click.
Good.
All right, is it shared?
Go ahead.
Okay, this is just introduction of myself, my background as an engineering from Kuwait University, having specialized in performance management, then moved to my second major of data analysis. Based on that, we are also, I'm certified in Black Belt Six Sigma project in addition to the Kaizen. My MBA in Harvard studied, increased my knowledge, which I'm founder for a company, accelerator company within Kuwait. So why I'm talking about Six Sigma here before we move to digitization, and what is the link of digitization and ecosystem, artificial intelligence, and what is Six Sigma exactly? Six Sigma is a part of solving a problem, breaking through that allow you to make use of statistics, data analysis, which lead you to reduces error and mistakes. The purpose is to improve overall the life cycle or the cycle time while reducing the manufacture defects with no more than 3.4 defects per million units of events. I believe my topic today is related to the conference track as a best practitioner for innovation, in addition to number 8, innovation approach for teaching entrepreneurship for creating. Those tools is really, Six Sigma is really important for those. I will give you a practitioner project that have been implemented within different sector in Kuwait through KOC as an oil sector, or my private company as a co-founder for Accelerator. Black Belt Six Sigma start with the 5 phases. Define phase, where you define your problem statement, project objective, and related business case. SIPOC, to understand the high level of your process map. Why you need to do this? Why? What's the purpose? What's the way forward, or the goal you need to achieve at the end of your process, in case if you find any defects in your process, or you need to reduce your cost. Then you need to study that process map, the constraints, and based on that data, you need to brainstorm what countermeasure against your constraints. Further, you take it to the future plan for your process, the future improvement of your future process, and then pilot it before your full-scale implementation. Once you find your process map, once you find your wastes within defects or defects within your process, of course, you can utilize the ecosystem, you can utilize the smart system developed in-house to be used to eliminate that defect, especially the waste for waiting time. And so I will give you an example of one business case happening within Kuwait oil company, how we did achieve of reducing time by eliminating waste. Services conducted within the field, process owner a project by the first map of the first phase of Six Sigma, which is the defined phase. You have to define the project objective, why you need to do this. SIPOC is the tool help you of identifying your process. Who is your supplier? Who's your input? What is your exact process, the output for your input, and who is your really direct customer? In this case, our supplier, the department within the company, inputs number of forms, number of data that's input within the company, what is the process in the company, and at the end, the customer, are they satisfied with the end service of the product? This is the second step of how you define your how to measure the third phase for Six Sigma, how to measure your data to find your defect. Once you do the process map, this is the current state example of one of the process map. It is in 2-page. You study each task and the duration, the waiting time. You identify the added value task and non-added value task. What do we mean by added value task and non-added value task? The value task that those input is critical to identify to the end of the process or the end of your service or product, or non-added value task, which is not definitely need to be within your process. Once you identify it, you need to measure the time of taking that task completed or not, duration of waiting time. As per our example, we can see that the total waiting time in that process is around 42. The total process time added value is only 4 days, and total leading time is 46 days. So the value added task related to the total leading time in that process, it was only 1% only. To identify the waste, and you put your future plan for that process, we identify the future process map that should be added value to that process, eliminating the waste, increase the added value time, try to identify why we have current waiting time. Is it due to task duration? Is it due to the inventory management system? Is it due to motion, geographic between department, or geographic between service? So once we identify the future time, you calculate again before you start your smart system, what is the value added if you did that future process map. In our case, the value added increased from 1 to 3%. Of course, you see it as a 3% is not that much, but I can show you what is added to that company to increase the value added from 1 to 3.25% in that process map. Of course, you need to involve all the departments by conducting different workshops within the company or the organization to let them understand their own process, to let them understand the full macro and micro process. And then once you complete that, you need to agree with that department of what is the pilot project that they need to identify, agreed about how to move forward to the future process map. Using the data that collected in the company, it shows that within 2 years of implementing such a process map, it was the median process time from 44 days, and it reduces to 27 days for only one task. Of course, the data collection is more than 4,263 events of data collection to identify that project. Then we move for implementation. The implementation takes place using a smart system to allow the workflow to do the process instead of manual paperwork, eliminating the waste of motion or transportation or paperwork, so that it will eliminate
It appears it's frozen. Can you? Hassan, can you hear us? Oh my. I'm not exactly sure what I should do under this situation because I think his screen is frozen. We'll see if he comes back in a moment.
I think that was more than a frozen screen, Beverly. I think he actually got cut off.
I think he did get cut off. How did that happen, I wonder?
I don't know. Technology is marvelous as long as it works.
Isn't it? Technology is marvelous. You know, that was one of the things that when in Paul's presentation here in Chicago, that they just had an article that people are trying to override the automatic systems. They don't like what it's doing. And this is one of the things that I was thinking about in your presentation. That, you know, they have the smart thermostats and all those things, but people don't want to, they want to constantly find a way to override the system that is trying to be more efficient. And I was thinking of human behavior and how that goes along with it. Oh, are you?
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Sorry about the connection.
Yes. Okay. Well,
I don't know what happened,
back.
really. I don't know what happened, but it's okay.
I'm sorry. You're going to have just a few moments left because our session has to end in eight minutes. So you've got 8 minutes.
Yeah, of course. I'm trying my best to be quick and within the 5 minutes. Okay. At the end of why we need to utilize Six Sigma, because it focuses in the process with the employee. At the end, it will lead to customer satisfaction, which reduces your financial cost within your organization. Another project that we have implemented within different sector within Kuwait with my accelerator company, with the digitization sector. We need to focus on inventory management system within Ministry of Interior. Inventory management system allow us to save more than 1.5 million KD by implementing inventory management system for Ministry of Interior. The same project have been implemented in inventory management system for Ministry of Health, which saved for Kuwait more than 3.7 million KD. Contract management system, we identified by implementing Six Sigma in Ministry of Health, also in different departments, that they need to utilize a contract smart system, which save more than 1.7 million KD. Another Ministry of Education, the same target of implementation we identified by implementing Six Sigma and smart contract management to Ministry of Education. So this is a few practitioners. I don't want to take more time of that. The more beautiful that you can see here, the voice of customer. I don't know if the video is working or not. Here is the voice of one of our customers, how they are happy by identifying digitization within the sector. And this is the end of the presentation. I will give you a takeaway at the end of the 2 minutes video, what we need to do with ecosystem.
Unfortunately, I don't believe you shared sound when you shared screen.
Oh. So I don't know. It's okay. It's okay. At the end, I will move forward to take away from my presentation. Do not start any digitization without analyze of your process, macro and micro process. Use a Six Sigma or Kaizen as a tool to identify your waste, how to break through your quality of service or defect within the process, then implement the ecosystem or smart system or the digitization sector within your company or organization. I'm really passionate to make it happen. So thank you. Thank you for listening, and I hope I didn't take and will be exactly on time within my presentation.
So sorry about the technical problems we had. Technology,
Yeah,
you know.
it's okay. It's okay.
Yeah,
at the end,
it happens.
the voice. Yeah, about the voice of within the video, it's okay. But I believe I delivered the message for the Six Sigma, the idea of Six Sigma, why we need to use it within our process, use the data to identify the defect within the process before implementation of digitization or any smart system within the company or organizations, institution.
I think all three of the presentations we've heard today make use of data. This is one of the things they're looking at is the data. And this is such an important message that you have to have the data to make the correct decisions. And I think,
of course.
But this was with all three of the presentations today. They talked about this need to do this. I think we have exactly, I think it's 1 minute left. If anyone wants to make any comments.
Please come forward. I'm ready for any comments.
Any comments that one would care to make? You can unmute yourself. I thought all three presentations were really excellent. AI, what's happening to it, and Professor Perry talked about all these things that are happening with AI, which sort of bothers me as I'm not sure society can keep up with it. That's my one concern. Can society manage to keep up with what's happening technologically? And Paul's presentation was just great. And Hassan, I think your presentation got the message across, even though you had some difficulties. Okay, and I want to thank you all for being here. And I want to thank Hannati for putting this session together. And
thank you so much, Beverly. But be with us, please. Supporting us and waiting, Beverly.
Oh, yes, I certainly will.
Thank you.
Absolutely.